Hello YouTube chess lovers and my friends, this is Gunjan here, and today I have one question for you. Against e4, are you getting tired of playing passively, such as playing French defense e6 or Caracans with c6 by giving up the center at early stage and then hitting back? Or are you getting tired of playing e5 where white can play all sorts of gambits such as King's Gambit or the Danish Gambit or the Gorian Gambit? Or also you may be fed up by studying lots and lots of theory of Sicilian and still does not come out as an attacking opening. Well, when I start playing chess, I was always wondering that is there any other systems apart from e5 and c5 which are equally very good and which seize the initiative from the white at early stages, and most important thing is, can I get a center as a black? And after going through so many openings, I was very disappointed, and I thought maybe there isn't any. But when I came to know about the Colorado Gambit, I was very excited. And the first thing is, this Gambit is very aggressive, a system against the white e4, and it's like it achieves everything. Like it sees the initiative from the white, it's also many lines it sees the center, and black has a very free piece play, and in some lines you get a vigorous attack against the white castle shot if the white castle shot. So all in all, it's a complete package against e4, and the big bonus is I have played up till now probably more than 100 games, and many opponents, I found it, they are very confused against this gambit. They completely don't know how to react, and somehow they fall into some of the nice traps of this gambit, or they completely lost positionally. So join with me today for this wonderful gambit and learn about the tricks and traps exist in this line. So let's start the opening. So white plays e4, and here I am recommending a move which is knight c6, which is known as a Nimzowitsch defense. What it does is basically it avoids any nasty like gambit openings such as f4, which is King's Gambit, or d4, which is Danish Gambit, and it's kind of inviting white to go back to knight f3 line, where this gambit will not affect anything to the black. So here there are two good moves from the white side. White can play this move d4. Well, in this case you should I recommend you should go through the theory section of Nimzowitsch defense, where I personally think the good move is e5, and you should know what happens if white take that pawn or moves further, or also go back to the main line of Scotch. So that you need to prepare if you are preparing about this gambit. Anyways, that is a completely different chapter, and if I get a time I will cover those as well. Right now let's stick to the main line, which is knight f3. So it's kind of white which like is hoping that black play e5 and goes back again to the line which probably he has prepared, for example modern Italian game or the roll-up as, and everything will be fine for white. But here comes the big surprise, and the surprise is f5. And to be honest with you, many times when I play, especially in blitz, people here stuck for 10 to 15 seconds and they try to find out what exactly going on. And what I will do in this video is, first we will have a look what is most likely a general response of from the white side, that if any kind of gambit occurred which the opponent does not know, then he tried to stay away from it rather than accepting. And what we will do here is, first we will go through the most dangerous way to decline the gambit step by step to the least, and then we'll finally have a look what happens if white accepts the gambit. So let's go to the most aggressive response from the white by declining the gambit, and the first move is e5. So pushing by, and white is hoping that he has more space than black, because f5 of course weakening the king of the black, and white can grab some space on the center. And now here I recommend you go d6. So now again attacking that pawn, and now here there are two lines. First line, which is very aggressive by white, and he tried to hold on to that pawn, and by playing this move, bishop b5. And here there comes the first trap in this line. And please remember this moves, because I guarantee you somebody will gonna fall for that. And probably I have around 10 to 15 games like this. So line goes like this. So of course black will take that pawn, and white will be jolly delighted, because not only the knight can regain that pawn, but now two pieces are attacking that poor old knight, right? So white will be more than happy. But here comes the shock. So queen d5 attacking knight as well as bishop, and white maybe thought, oh, black has fallen into one of the cheap trap, and he'll go for this line. So bishop takes. Now of course we need to recapture with the pawn, and now comes this check. And this is very typical trap, occurs at the beginner's level, but here it's outright mistake by white. Let's see how. So after queen check, of course we need to play g6, and after knight captures, here comes the first move, which is knight f6. So gaining a time on a queen. There's only one logical square. If the queen moves from the h file, then the knight drops. So queen has to stay on the h file. So queen goes back to h4. And now can you spot a very nice combination or nice way to start? Okay, I'm going for it right now. So the correct move is queen cross g2, and now you can see that two pieces are hanging. The rook is hanging as well as the knight. And if white is foolish enough to take the rook, but otherwise it will lost a piece for nothing, then queen takes rook, king goes to e2, and now instead of grabbing that bishop in the corner, which is this one, there is a stronger move than that. And please note this move if you are going to play this line, and that move is f4. And now you can see that bishop is almost hanging around. So white needs to defend that bishop, and there's only one move, which is knight c3, which at least defending that bishop. But now comes the mating attack, which is, and please remember this line. So now comes the mating attack, which you should remember. Bishop check. So now king has only one square, which is king d3. Now queen f1 check. King has only one possibility, which is king d4. Now comes rook check. Again one square, king c5. And now after e5, king takes c6, and queen a6. Only move left for the white king is to take that pawn. Afterwards it leads to mate in one. So queen b6 is a checkmate. So this is one of the very good trap in this line. So you should remember this trap. And see how the white king was dancing around, and we have enjoy to meet him. Okay, so that was a first nice cute trap in this line. If white become greedy and play bishop b5. Now you should know what to do if white accept the pawn. So in the second case, let's consider white taking on this pawn. So e cross d6, and now we should capture by the c pawn. And now again there are two lines. So if let's say white is playing very passively, for example, let's take this line, which is bishop e2, e5, and after castle knight f6. Now indeed there is a threat of e4. So white needs to stop that. So after d3 we have this move, d5, and now you can see our three pawn are covering the center. And how often you get this kind of structure against white, and especially against e4? In fact, I don't remember much openings which give you that much advantage. See how much centers we are covering, and not only that, our simple planning is bishop is coming to d6 and then we castle, and then we have automatic king side attack starting with f5 probably. I don't know, but there are many ways you can do it, right? So it's almost you are equal or more than equal at this point. So that is one of the line if white plays very passively. So let's see a line where white plays aggressively. So white plays knight c3, and after e5 white played okay, instead of d4, if white is foolish enough to play bishop c4, which looks like a logical move, because the f file has been opened, so it's very logical to play bishop c4. But after e4, that poor old knight does not have any good squares, so knight has to go back, and white is next, sorry, black is next, is playing knight f6 and d5, and black is almost more than equal here, or probably higher. So of course bishop c4 is not a good move, so the correct move is the d4, and after d4 black should play knight f6. No need to hurry or push your e-pawns. Right now is need to carry on the development. So after knight f6, the sample line goes like this. So white can play d5, and after knight b4, this is one of my game which I played on the internet. It went on like that. So after knight b4, he give me a check. My opponent give me a check, so I block with the bishop. And after bishop takes, queen takes, and a3, my knight nicely drop backs to a6, where it can comes to either c5 or c7 depending on the scenario. So for example, in this game my opponent castle, and after bishop e7 he come out with the knight g4, which at first sight looks that e6 square is very much on the card with the knight, but I can nicely cover that square again by with my knight to c7, and after queen d3 castle, there is a long game happened which initially I won, but you can see black has those two pawns, e pawn e5 and f5, which covering the whole center, and that is more than equal here at this stage, black. And in a moment I can kick that knight away, and then my pawns are rolling. So see, again black is covering the center, and again this opening turns out very well here. Okay, moving on. So that was all about the e5 push. Okay, if there are other ways where white does not need to push that pawn, white can go for the second line, which is starts like this. So knight to c3, and of course white is developing, but he has seized the center, and this is one of the very good line where black get a good center out of it. So let's see how the black achieve this. So after f cross e, knight cross e, we play d4, and most logical square for knight is knight g3, and after e5 again we have the center, and a simple line can be goes like this. So after bishop b5 we play bishop g4, and after h3 we simply lop off that knight, and after queen takes we play knight f6. And if your opponent feeling aggressive, he might try this move, knight h4, knight h5, but after very simple move, queen d6, knight takes, pawn takes, and queen h5 check. Looks like we are disturbing the castling, but there is no issues because black can simply play queen d7, and in next moves the rook can come out to d8 and king goes back again to c8, and it tends to move as an artificial castle. And look at the center, we have nice 3 pawn center where white does not have any center, and we have almost a very good game from here. So that is against knight c3. Now there is another line where white completely gambits the point, which starts like this. So bishop to c4, that's the line. But here I think this is the worst scenario for the white side, because, and this is very simple to play as a black, because we have a very simple reply, f cross e. Now if knight g5, I don't believe this, because after d5 black is almost very well placed here. So the main line goes like this. So bishop takes g8. Here we will continue like this. So e cross f3, and after bishop d5, f cross g2, and after bishop cross g2, g6. Have a look. Our planning is very simple. Bishop g7, castling on the king side, and we can seize the center by playing either e5 or d5 depending on the situation. And the main drawback for the white is, see those pawns h2 and f2, they are very very weak, and that can be a big asset for us even in the endgame. So see the opening, it's turned out very very well, and if your opponent is refuting this gambit, we should be very happy, because we're getting a very very good initiative as well as the big center. So finally, let's see what happens if after this moves white accept the gambit. So e cross f5. Well, here you should play d5. So our first priority is to regain that pawn by capturing with the bishop. Now if white wants to try to hang on to that pawn, then he might comes under different kind of tactics. So let's say first white is trying to hang on to that pawn, so by playing bishop to d3. Well, here very simple way to diffuse is to play knight h6, so again attacking that pawn. And if white plays now knight to h4, that comes a very good tactic, so e5. So please note, white cannot take with the n% because the knight is hanging. So very obvious response is to queen check to f7. And after such a move like knight to c3, we have another amazing move, which is g6. And first side, or on the first side, it looks like a suicidal, because there is f pawn and you giving f pawn a whole space. But there is a big tactics. Let's say if white is foolish enough to take that f cross g6, then after h cross g6, you can see that poor knight is hanging. So that is not possible. And if queen goes away, for example queen goes to g4, of course he needs to remain in contact with the knight, because knight is hanging. So in this case, again there is a very good move. I give you a few seconds. Can you spot an amazing move over here? Okay, the good move is this move, g5. And now look at that poor knight. It has only one square, which is f3. And after the knight goes back to h3, we have e4, and the two pieces are hanging. And in one of my game, my opponent took this pawn by bishop. He thought that he's gaining a 2 pawn from the bishop, but to his horror, after this move, he probably realized the situation is getting worse, and the correct move over here is h4. And look at now, forget about the bishop, now queen is look like it's a trap. And let's say if the queen goes over here, then we have more time on the queen by playing bishop to d6, and after queen only square, which is h3, we take this bishop, and again we are looming the threats like g4. So white does not have any time to capture on that e pawn, and it's a disgusting position for the white. So black will have all kind of funs. Okay, so that was first option when white is trying to hang on to that pawn with bishop d3. Let's take the second option where it hang on to the pawn another way. So knight to h4 straight away, intending queen h5 check. In this case, we are playing again knight h6, and after queen h4, queen h5 check, we play g6, and this amazingly turns out very well for black. It's a sacrifice, it's a pawn sacrifices. So after f cross g, h cross g, and here there are again two options. If knight cross g6, then we have this move, bishop to g4, and after, let's say, if queen goes to g5, then we have this one, rook to g8, and it's spinning the knight. And our next agenda is to queen to d6, which will attack that knight and castling on the queen side, and black has very good initiative over here. If the queen goes to h4, in this case we have another good move, which is queen to d6, and now that knight is hanging, and the check is looming. So for example, if your opponent is foolish enough to take the rook in the corner, then that leads to mate. So this is one of the good trap of Colorado Gambit. And let's see if your opponent take here with the queen. So queen cross g6. Now again knight comes back to knight comes to f7, and now you see that knight is hanging. So white has to forcefully play either g6, or if he does not want to play that, sorry, g3, then he has to retrieve the knight to f3. Well, here we'll start with gaining initiative against the queen. So rook goes to h6, queen goes back, and now bishop to f5. And one of the game from here, one of my own game goes from here like that. So after bishop to f5, my opponent played d4. I played again the rook g6, gaining time on queen. So queen goes to the h4, and after queen to d7. Now you see there are few threats over here. So if the knight has been allowed to b4, then c2 is hanging, and if the bishop moves to the b4, then this pawn is hanging. So by considering all this, my opponent played bishop e3, but then I simply castle on the queen side, and after the knight e3, I played e6, and after he played knight to b5, I played bishop to e7, and I think there's only one move, and he played queen to f4, which after the rook to g4, he simply realized that he has a lost position. Anyways, if the queen does not trap like that, black has a very simple plan, which both the rooks are covering h and g file, as I mentioned by the arrows. Like this rook goes over here, and this rook is already on the g file, and then if the white castle on the somehow white managed to castle on the king side, then we have a furious attack on this h and g pawns, and you can see that there is a big initiative for the black over here, and I would, if anybody would like to be as a black in this position. Okay, so that is about, let's say, hanging on to that pawn. Now in most of the scenario, especially in the tournaments, white will know all this, and probably he will go through more positional play, for example playing such move like d4. Well, here we should of course regain our pawn, so bishop cross f5, and considering all the scenario, I will choose the most aggressive one from the white side. So the most aggressive one, which starts like this, so bishop goes to the b5, and now it's threatening to cripple our pawns. So we should first of all play e6, and in one of my game my opponent play the most aggressive line, which is of course the main line in this Colorado Gambit, which is knight to e5, and here I played knight to e7, and which is intending to play a6 and drive away that bishop. So my opponent decide to do not give me that much amount of time, so he first of all give me this check, and after g6 the queen goes back to e2, and nicely defending the knight. So here to get an advantage, there's only one move for the black, and that is bishop to g7, again hitting that knight. And after moves such as okay, in the game my opponent played bg5, this move happened, but we should see what happens if white tries to be greedy and if he plays moves such as g4, where g4 does not turns out with a big deal, because after the bishop goes to e4, and if white think he can trap the bishop by playing f3, here comes the big surprise, which is, can you spot it? Yep, it's a castle. And now if white is foolish enough to capture that bishop, now comes the shock. So knight cross d4, and now you can see the two pieces are hanging as well as the knight, and black will have a wonderful position from over here. Okay, so my opponent probably knows all this, and he played bishop g5. So you can see now the two bishops are pinning those knights, but there is a good move here for the black side, and which is queen to d6, which is right now supporting that knight, and also unpinning from one of the bishop. And in one of my game my opponent played bishop takes knight, and after king takes that bishop, he took another knight. So I regained by the pawn, and games continues like this. So he played f4 supporting that knight, but after rook b8 and c3, you can see my rooks are my h rook can go anywhere on the back rank, and my then king can slot back into the g8 square. And most important factor is black has a bishop pair, and sooner or later the game will be open, and that will give an advantage to the black. So I hope you enjoy all these lines, and especially for me this turns out very well, and I hope by considering all these lines, even for you this will turn out very well. Before we leaving, I like to thank you FM Valery Liu, which in fact show me this line. I have learned this line from one of his video, and I have included some of his variation and some of mine with the experience by playing with this line, and with the help of Fritz. So I wish you best of luck to play this line, and you will see how enjoying experience you will have by playing this line. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please feel free to comment on my video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.